My guest today grew up knowing he could do no wrong. How about that? He had an exuberant confidence, brashness, and sense for fun. And perhaps I should say had and still has. And mixed in with that, a natural gift for empathy. Koch, speaker and consultant from Consultative Sales Technology. Awesome to be having this conversation today.
Thank you.
I was prompted to be in touch. You wrote an article a week or 2 weeks ago on empathy on LinkedIn, which I just loved. And I personally see it as so topical. It's been a very big part of my life and how I do my life. But I'm seeing an unfolding now in the business world that wasn't there 20 years ago. And I think some of it is about this. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Gary V, about 12 months ago, employed a chief heart officer, and her role is to be developing empathy amongst his 800 staff. So, you know, I think we're coming into a wonderful new age. So you have some thoughts on empathy. How would you describe it?
Okay, well, thank you for that. The article that we listed on the Institute's website isn't an article, Pat, that I've written, but that I completely support with my workings. Yep. And so I should give appropriate credence to the author. But that's listed in the article. I presently speak on the essence of trust, and you can't have trust with someone if they don't feel that you can empathize with their point of view. The human mindset sits very comfortably when in a conversation somebody says, look, I can really understand how you feel, but more than just saying the statement, they can actually connect that statement has meaning, actual meaning. Now, in the modern era that we now live in, where people try to communicate electronically from a million miles apart without doing what even you and I are doing right now, yeah. The process of empathizing becomes extremely difficult. All of the empathy that I'm used to teaching and doing requires me to really see people, because I can sense how they're feeling about what I'm saying, and they can sense how I'm feeling. And so when you're not doing it at least on a screen base, and you're doing it from a remote position where the two people can't connect visually, the process of empathy needs to be turbocharged at another level for it to exist. Yeah. So now somebody can only rely on what they're hearing as opposed to what they are seeing. Yes. And what they are hearing then needs to give them the visual reality that the person speaking has empathy with how they are feeling right at that moment, even though they're not in their presence. So I'm finding that many people don't get taught at school or at home how to listen, how to make somebody feel special and important, regardless of whether that person's view is diametrically different to their own. And all that's happened in the media and with social networks and so on is that the whole community seems to have an opinion about everything, even if they have no real substance in their opinion. They have an opinion, whether it's about the elections or it's about people protesting or it's about an accident in the freeway. The rubbernecking that happens that clogs up our freeways doesn't require to happen on a freeway. It happens in conversation. People stop and have a look, and then they're not being objective. They're not being empathetic to the point where they are really interested on how somebody is feeling at the time when they're making these particular comments, and therefore we're too judgmental. It's very, very difficult to communicate empathy if you go into a conversation believing that you're right and the other person's wrong. So that's the first thing you have to discard, that you're genuinely speaking in a place where you are neutral at best, and probably moving towards being quite open to have your views altered, if you know what I mean. If you go into it in any other structure, the whole process becomes very combative, and then you really, you may walk away from a meeting saying, look, I think they really understood what we were saying and we've made our point, but you are completely wrong. You may have been given a glimpse of that possibility, but it hasn't been sustained. And so listening is very important. Being in a non-judgmental position is very important. And being able to see the world through somebody else's eyes that may be very different to your own is where I think empathy is born. Yeah. And if empathy is born like that, then you've got a good chance of having somebody understand that you have empathy.
And I think for me, I was giving this some thought before our conversation. I was a nurse for 16 years. That was my first job. And in that time frame, we had to create really high trust environments very quickly. You didn't have a few hours to kind of get to know somebody before you did some fairly invasive procedure. So there were a lot of things that had to happen and be condensed before people, kind of relaxed into your trust. And I think the two are really good partners, trust and empathy. They, I've endeavoured to analyse some of that time back then, what was it around that enabled that trust to happen very quickly? And I think we can hold some of it in our presence. People get a feeling about our energy and they think, I really like that person, I could trust her. But then there's, as you were saying, the way you lead your conversation, which is, from a point of inquiry and, asking more questions, going deeper. That's where you really get people really get that you're really listening. Most of us, and I've been guilty too probably, we listen to respond. It's like, what am I going to, he's saying that, so what am I going to say now to answer? And when we do that, especially if we do it consistently, then we lose presence. We're not present to what's really going on.
And I think that empathy, being isolated just to what you're hearing through somebody's speech, is one part. Then there's the other section, which is feeling, which is not verbalized, but so people like Alan Pease and others that have helped us on the concept of body language are trying to say to us, look, they may not be saying they're disagreeing with you or that they're closed to your views, but they're demonstrating in some physical sense. And then there's the other area that I like to move into where it's purely thought and energy. It's not demonstrated. It's not verbalized. No one's nodding their heads or shaking their hands or closing their fists or doing leaning back on their chair or any of those sorts of things. But they're almost brilliant poker players in the communication process, and they're not demonstrating it. But they've got 4 aces in there, or they feel they've got 4 aces, and they're not showing you where they are. So you can't even connect. And that's another level of intuitive ability I think everyone has. I know my wife Bianca has an abundance of it that I don't have. The number of times she's told me that somebody that I planned to go into business with was not an honourable person, and I've neglected to take that advice, and she's been right every time. In fact, I should hire her out for these sorts of services to get some sort of return, you know, on my investment. But some people have that innate ability to know that the truth hasn't yet surfaced, and that comes from an empathy position to say, look, I'm not being critical of them. I just know that we're not on the same page. There's no right or wrong. There just is, you know, but we're not on the same page. And my ability to be entrepreneurial allows me to believe that everybody's on my page, because I'm telling them what a good page it is. But the more I tell them how great it is, the more they may have an inbuilt caution or a resistance, all of which is energetically accessible, if you're open to picking up those vibes. And I'm sure on the stage you would know well that there are times when we're speaking that the audience is telling us to shut up, and they're not aggressive or anything. They're just saying, look, can you move on to the next subject, please? We've had enough of this, you know. Or can you please go back to that previous comment you made? I'd like to have more information about that. And those of us that have that ability to be open to those energetic transferences can pick that up, and the audience go, well, that's great, I'm glad they do that, because I wanted them to do that. But we've been fortunate, we've been empathetic enough to hear that, to feel that, you know. And I think that's these days a rarely exhibited skill, because people believe that technology can play this role between two human beings, and I don't think that technology has yet to be developed that can do that. And if it has, I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah. For me, there's nothing beats that personal exchange. I call it intimate communion. It's you know, not about getting into bed with anybody, but going to that next layer of communication, and it's the layer at which people feel really heard.
Yeah.
You know, she really gets me, or they feel comfortable enough to share vulnerably, and being able to foster that has been a gift. Or I have a bit of a knack for it, but I also needed to develop it. So, you know, that combination, and that's what I was going to talk to you about. Can we grow it, do you think? Can we build, how do we build empathy in ourselves and others?
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate that I'm poorly educated. And I think education tries to compartmentalize methods and systems of how people operate. If we didn't have that, and we didn't have all this knowledge that we want to impart on somebody, all we would have is the thought, the feeling, the love, the caring. They're the things that we would be demonstrating as our first connection to people, rather than our wisdom and our perceived knowledge and all of those sorts of things. So education tends to give us this false sense that if we show people we're smart and we demonstrate our intelligence, and we can quote from endless books, you know, and that suddenly the person listening will be inspired by our brilliance. And if we didn't have that, then we'd have to connect on some other levels, which is that we genuinely care, and that we're genuinely interested, and that we are open to ideas. And if you're not going to be open to somebody's viewpoint, how the hell are you going to empathize with them? It's just not possible, you know. So, you know, and so when you say to somebody, I'm really interested in how you feel, that doesn't necessarily restrict it to what you're saying. That's actually how you're feeling. And there have been many times that in conversation I'm feeling quite differently to what I'm saying. But somebody with an abundance of empathy will be able to assess both the words and the feeling. And those that do will end up addressing the feeling which will then avoid all the complications that would normally happen by addressing just the words. You know, it's like in the sales field, the number of times that somebody would say to a salesperson, look, that's very interesting, let me think about it. And, you know, the Americans would say, well, what is it in particular you think about? Now, that already creates an aggressive stance because the person doesn't want to say, look, I actually hate you. And that's what I wanted to think about. And I need more time to hate you more. And all you've done now is accelerated my hatred. When in actual fact, when somebody says, look, I'd really like time to think about it, the empathetic process is that it doesn't matter what it is they want to think about. They're actually demonstrating to you that they're uncomfortable at this stage to proceed for whatever reason. That's the empathetic connection. To then give people a sense of opportunity that if they wish to express to you what it is that is of concern to them, that they will. Trying to pressure them into doing it will only get you another lot of rubbish, and then all you do is end up responding to that rubbish, which is very American sales orientated. And if you said to a person, look, I can understand and empathize with your uncertainty, so I'm more than happy to leave it with you. Okay, it's remarkable how many people go, well, let me tell you what my problem is. Whereas you won't get it by combating them. You just have to allow people the right and the space to feel that they have the right to be confused or anxious or worried or stressed. That's empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy doesn't come from saying, look, you're a complete moron, stop thinking and buy my product. It doesn't come from there.
No.
Yes.
No. Today is actually...
Anyway, I hope those thoughts are helpful to you.
They are useful, very useful, I think. Today is actually World Mental Health Day, and hadn't planned that we'd be talking on that day, but I think it's quite pertinent. There are so many people who experience levels of distress around their own mental health, whether it's depression or levels of anxiety, stress, at many and varied experiences of that. Loneliness and grief also figure in there. And I think we can get so busy in our own lives, drawn by the 100 things I've got to do, that, we do look out, but we don't always see what's there. I remember some years back, I had a presenter come to a women's group I was in, and she presented on all the statistics for everything possible that could happen in Australia. So it was probably the most boring presentation I've ever heard. There was 100 people in the room, and she was about a third of the way through, and I just really got it. It's like, oh my God, yes. I look around this room, and any one of the things that this woman's talking about could be in the lives of any of these people in the room. And so since that day, I've been able to look at the passing parade and just have that broader appreciation for what might be possible. So people coming through your door, people you sit down to coffee with, go to a meeting, any of those circumstances could be in their life. It's not the purpose that you're there for. And I've been really good all of my life putting on a bright persona and stepping out. But it's not always, often it's been camouflaging my movement through difficult times. So that's been useful, but it's not always truthful. And it doesn't, we can, other people could be of support to us if we could open up to that possibility. And, I think what we've been talking about today goes well to just be inviting empathy. Kindness goes along with empathy.
Well, perhaps where you're going to now is a great place, because I think empathy starts at home, and by home I mean with each of us being empathetic to ourselves.
Yeah.
So, if you really demonstrate empathy as a process, you must be able to hear empathetically what you are saying to somebody, how you are feeling, without being judgmental of any of that, because that allows you to be yourself with all its warts and difficulties, but it allows you the space to have a conversation with yourself about how you're feeling.
Yes.
And if you don't have that ability to be honestly empathetic with yourself and non-judgmental with yourself, it's probably arrogant to believe that you can suddenly put yourself in a position where others will express trust with you and care with you, because there's a dishonesty occurring here. You know, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to say, look, I understand how you feel, because I too feel this way. There's no intellectual gap between us. It's just we're both human. You know, we aren't perfect in that space. And at that point, people start to trust each other in the knowledge that no matter what they say, it won't be judged, but it will be understood. And that's, I think, the people that get to that point reach this level of uniqueness in empathy that makes them remarkable human beings to themselves and to others. And I've not met anybody that's achieved that level. Perhaps that's called nirvana or heaven or something. But I think it's something we should all strive towards, because it's a constant learning process.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's about, well, having or endeavouring to have that appreciation of our shared humanity.
Yes.
You know, and the way to do that, I think, is about being present. And, you know, are we a master? Well, someone else can be the judge on that. But I think people will always appreciate that on its own, at whatever level, is enough.
I think so. I think so. And let's make sure we put that out into the universe.
Yes. I saw the other day a post on Facebook with some people, you know, criticising Ellen DeGeneres for being at a baseball game with George Bush, and commenting that, you know, they had such opposing values. How could she do that? And her comment and reply back was, when I say that I espouse for you all to be kind, I don't mean only be kind to those whose values you share.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So, you know, when we've got our own principles and values and we hold true to them, I think that helps in this place. You know, when we're more sure of who we are and can be a stand for those things, it doesn't mean everyone's going to agree with that, but then we're much more comfortable to express, which creates that opportunity for further communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well done.
This has been awesome, Chris. Thank you so much. I'm sure this will be well received. Is there a message you would like to leave as we close?
Perhaps if we can all embark on the fact that every single person we interact with, meet, hear, listen to, has the right to be different, the process of empathy will be turbocharged in the world.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for talking to us. If people wanted to be in touch, what's the best way to connect with you?
Look, they can go to Chris at consultativesales.com .com, which is .com.au, which is my email address.
Yep.
They can go to the website, which is consultativesales.com.au. And that's probably the best way, and I will respond. I'm also on LinkedIn, so if anybody'd like to communicate with me through LinkedIn, they're more than welcome. I will respond to every connection request I get and every inquiry.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Look forward to sharing this out with the world today. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Pat.